What's up, geeks? I'm John Sargent, and this is Fit Geek Training, where we talk about your fitness and all the things that you geek out about. Today, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite movies from the MCU. We're going to review it, we're going to rank it. I can't wait. It's Captain America: The First Avenger. Stick around. What's up, geeks? I'm John Sargent, and this is Fit Geek Training. Today, we are going to be reviewing Captain America: The First Avenger. I'm really stoked about this one. We've been going through all of the Marvel movies. We've done all the other ones up until this. This is the first one before we get to the Avengers. And it's been a ton of fun so far, so let's keep it rolling. Let's start reviewing the movie. We're going to start out with the cast. Alright, first and foremost, we have to talk about Chris Evans. I think Chris Evans is the best casting in all of the Marvel universe. They begged and pleaded with him to do it. He didn't want to do it, and Robert Downey Jr. convinced him to do it, and he is perfect. He obviously conveys the strength and the athleticism, but he just comes across as good. Obviously, I don't know Chris Evans, but I feel like he actually is a good person. I've heard a lot of stories about him with like children's hospitals and all that sort of stuff that you've probably heard about also. And he is absolutely phenomenal as Captain America. We have Haley Atwell. She plays Agent Carter. I don't know anything else that she's done other than Agent Carter, but they have a good chemistry together. She doesn't do anything spectacular. It is pretty good when she shoots the gun at him when she's pissed and hits the shield. So she's got a few good moments in the movie. We've got Sebastian Stan playing Bucky Barnes. This is an interesting casting because clearly he was cast because he would end up the Winter Soldier. Spoiler alerts. And so to play just James Barnes, he's fairly forgettable in the first movie if that's all you've seen. But when you know what's to come and you're looking for it, it's a lot more touching, his friendship with Cap. Tommy Lee Jones. He plays Colonel Phillips. I love Tommy Lee Jones. I don't care what he's in. He's in the bad Jason Bourne movie, and I still like him. He just has a way of delivering sarcasm and dryness that I really like. When he's trying to tell Erskine about how he doesn't want this tiny kid to be the super soldier, and he looks at him, and he's just skinny and weak, and he goes, "Look at him. He's making me cry." I love that line. Tommy Lee Jones is the man. We see Howard Stark as recasted from the Iron Man movies. Dominic Cooper plays that role, and I feel like he's been underutilized in the Marvel universe. Obviously, at that age, he really only could take place in World War II at that age, so they needed an older actor for the later movies. I just feel like I wish they would have found more things for him to do. And then we've got Hugo Weaving as the Red Skull. As Johann Schmidt. We know him from The Matrix. We know him from Lord of the Rings. He's had better performances in other things. This one isn't bad, but if I'm just trying to find a Hugo Weaving movie, I'll go V for Vendetta or The Matrix or one of those movies. All right, let's get into the plot. So the first thing we see is some guys walking around in the Arctic, and they're like, what do you got for me? And they're like, oh, we got something huge for you. And you realize it's a ship, like a plane or something along those lines. And they go in there, and you see the frozen shield inside of it. I'm pretty sure people are born knowing Captain America's origin to a certain extent, so they just felt like showing the shield in ice was enough. And then it jumps back to World War II and starts telling Steve Rogers' story from there. But before that, they show Johann Schmidt coming into a church, I think, and he's looking for the Tesseract. He's looking for the power of the gods, as he calls it. We know that those gods that he's referring to are Asgardians, and we saw the Tesseract sitting in Odin's treasure room in Thor. And he steals the Tesseract from them, and they tell him, like, listen, man, you can't handle this kind of power. You can't touch this.
You can't touch this.
Spoilers, it turns out he shouldn't touch it. Then we pick up on teeny tiny Steve Rogers. He's trying to enlist to help his country in World War II. I'm a big fan of pretty much anything that's set in World War II if it's well made. Obviously, I love The Rocketeer, same director as Captain America. And so we see Steve, he's trying to enlist and he's being rejected because he's tiny and he's got flat feet and asthma and allergies and all these medical problems. And so he keeps getting denied into the military. He goes to see a movie and there's a bully there and he ends up fighting him in the alley, and the bully is beating the hell out of him, and he tells the bully, I can do this all day. That's a running theme for Steve Rogers. He will not back down from a fight and he will not quit. Then his best friend Bucky, who at the time is significantly larger than him, comes and saves the day. They go out on the town. Bucky's about to ship out, and while they're at the World's Fair, this is before the Stark Expo, essentially the same thing, he decides he's going to try one more time to enlist, and he falsifies his information, and a German doctor named Erskine, overhears their conversation, and he confronts Steve in the medical exam and asks him if he wants to kill Nazis, and he's like, I don't want to kill anybody, I just don't like bullies. And he realizes that this is a good guy. Yeah, he's a midget, and yeah, he weighs 15 pounds, and he's got every disease known to man according to his medical report, but he's a good, solid human being. So he brings him into the super soldier program where they're going to select people to be super soldiers. In the training process, they realize he is physically the weakest of all of these men, but by far the smartest and by far the bravest. TLJ takes a grenade and he throws it on the ground and everybody else bolts. But Steve jumps right on top of the grenade. He tells everybody else to get away. And TLJ is like, nah, he's still tiny. He's still not bought into it. They decide they're going to go with Steve as the first super soldier, the first one to get the serum. And he doesn't even really know what it's going to do. And Erskine explains to him that when he was defecting from Germany, he actually attempted to use this one other time because he was forced to. And he did it to Johann Schmidt, and it made him stronger, and it made him smarter, but it also increased his evil. So it takes whatever's in somebody and it amplifies it. So it made Johann Schmidt's evil evilier, and it's going to take Steve's goodness and make him goodier. While that's happening, Schmidt is taking the Tesseract and he's using it to power new weapons. He's got a guy named Zola who has developed these weapons, but there's not a way to power them until they get the Tesseract. And then they've got an army of Hydra agents. This is the first time we're introduced to Hydra in the Marvel movies officially. After you've seen Captain America, Winter Soldier, and we know about Hydra and how they've infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D., and you go back and you watch some of these older movies and you start picking out these Hydra agents, it adds just a little bit more interest to each scene when you know who's bad and who's good. It's a ton of fun to watch the Hydra versus S.H.I.E.L.D. thing. So Steve is gonna go through the super soldier treatment. They put him in a kind of a coffin and they load him up with steroids and sunlight, and boom, he pops out and he's huge. And Agent Carter goes to touch his chest, and that was totally not scripted. She actually just couldn't keep her hands to herself. But he comes out and he's huge and he's tall, and there is a Hydra spy in the room, and he sets off a bomb and he shoots Dr. Erskine and kills him, and Steve goes and chases him down. The super soldier program is completely destroyed. I think there's one vial of the serum left, but Dr. Erskine died and he was the brains of the operation, so there is going to be no more super soldier program. Spoilers. They're going to make a lot of attempts at more super soldiers, but as far as they know in the moment, there's not going to be any more. So TLJ tells Steve, listen, I needed a whole army and all I have is you. Get out of here. I don't need you. And some other dude, I think he's a USO guy, tells Steve, we can use you. And what they use him for is to be sort of a marketing tool. And he goes around on tour and he's in this spangly outfit and he's selling bonds so that to fund the war. And he's not happy about it. He ends up in Italy, and the actual soldiers are there for this performance. they're not feeling him at all because he's dressed in this bright blue suit. He's not. They want the girls. They don't want him at all. So he's sitting there feeling sorry for himself, and Agent Carter comes and tells him that Bucky and his group have been captured. And Cap goes to TLJ and he's like, "Let me go get him." And TLJ's like, "No, not a chance." So he just does it anyways. He keeps wearing his spangly suit plus some leather. Really good look. I'm glad that they kind of retroactively in the comics adapted that look for him. Agent Carter and Howard Stark as the pilot take Cap. They fly him to the Hydra base, and he jumps out and he beats up 30 guys by himself. It is pretty cool to see Cap in action in this movie. It's just not as cool as it ended up being in the other Cap movies. It needed to evolve a little bit. So whenever there's like a fight scene in this one, it is a couple of steps below when you see him later on. But nonetheless, Cap does save Bucky. He saves all of the Howling Commandos, and he marches them back to the American base, and they've got Hydra weapons, they've got tanks. He saved like I think 400 of them, and now all of a sudden he is a big deal. While he was saving them, he memorized a map of all the Hydra bases, so him and Bucky and the Howling Commandos go on the rampage, and they just go start beating up anybody wearing a Hydra uniform and destroying all of their bases so that they can't build more weapons. While they're doing that, they're going to assault a moving train, which is just a mobile base for Hydra, and in the process of doing so, Bucky is thrown from the train and falls to his death. There used to be a running thing in comics that the only two people who were ever going to stay dead were Bucky Barnes and Gwen Stacy, Spider-Man's girlfriend. Another spoiler alert, neither one of them stays dead. Cap doesn't have time to mourn Bucky, though. He learns that that Zola was captured on the train mission and that he gave up Red Skull real easily. They offered him a stake that he didn't even want, yet he still gave up all the intel. Not a very good teammate for Hydra at all. And so he said, he's planning to destroy the entire world. Here's where he's at. So Cap takes some of his homies and he strolls in, and they break into the base, and Red Skull has got a giant plane with a bunch of bombs. He's headed for the US. Cap gets on the plane. He fights some Hydra guys. He doesn't actually defeat the Red Skull. The Red Skull defeats himself. He picks up the Tesseract with his bare hands, and he doesn't burn up. He's sort of like you see space behind him. I think he went to another dimension. The Tesseract falls through the plane into the water, I guess, and then Cap has to decide he's got to put this plane down. He's got to intentionally crash it. There's a really, really kind of touching moment where he's on the communication with Agent Carter, and they make a date to go dancing. And they both know what's going to happen. They both know that he's got to go down with this plane. It's a pretty cool moment. He crashes the plane into the ice. It goes black. And then he wakes up and he's in a hospital room. The radio's on, but he's way too smart. He may have a photographic memory. Fact check me on that. Let me know in the comments. Does Captain America have a photographic memory? And he recognizes the radio. He recognizes the baseball game. And he's like, no. And he runs out of the place. He breaks out and he realizes this is not 1945. This is, 2012. And S.H.I.E.L.D. pulls up so that and Nick Fury's there, so he doesn't freak out and lets him know, like, nah, I got something I gotta tell you. You've been asleep for 75 years. And then he's like, yeah, I had a date. It's a pretty cool ending to the movie. Then we get our post-credit scene, and it is the least interesting of the post-credit scenes if you watch it now, because it's just a trailer for the Avengers. However, then, before the Avengers and the things that came after it existed, a trailer for the Avengers was all I wanted. It was the only thing that was my reason to live. Alright, ranking. I love this movie to death. I love any good movie set in World War II. I love superhero movies. I love kind of fantasy sci-fi type movies. And this is all of that. Plus good acting, plus good directing, plus a great score. Captain America, the First Avenger, for me, is number 8 out of 17 in the Marvel movies. In about 3 weeks, we're going to have 18 movies, but we have 17 right now, and this is one of my favorites. Like I said before, the things that kind of knock it down just a little bit, the fight scenes are not as interesting as they end up being for Cap, and also Red Skull isn't super compelling. And again, in another Marvel movie, the fight at the end is almost irrelevant. All right, the rundown. The rundown is going to be a weekly thing. It's my bold thought. It's kind of a thesis statement. It's a big one this week. In Captain America, comics and this movie, the moment that Steve receives the super soldier treatment is the most important moment in all of Marvel. I'm going to stick to just the movies here, obviously, and I'm going to include the X-Men movies now that Disney has bought Fox. That moment, the super soldier treatment, the success of Steve Rogers becoming Captain America, inspired the gamma treatment that created the Hulk. That's what they were trying to recreate. It created Howard Stark's fascination with Captain America, which resulted in Tony Stark's resentment of Steve Rogers, and that's what ultimately led to the Civil War. Also, if you add in Bucky Barnes becoming Winter Soldier, another attempt at the super soldier recreation, killing Howard Stark and Mrs. Stark. Then, side note, Weapon X is also an attempt at recreating the super soldier serum. So then you get Wolverine, you get Deadpool, you get Sabretooth, and all of those people that came from it. Omega Red hasn't been in a movie yet. Please put him in a movie. But that singular moment and the success of Steve Rogers as Captain America is the reason you have most of the Marvel Universe. This week, I'm going to be adding in something new. I'm going to give you guys some recommendations, some things other than the Marvel movies, but specific to that character that you can check out. One of the two things I'm going to recommend to you this week is the Ultimate Avengers movie. This is an animated movie, came out around the same time as Captain America, and it's essentially an animated version of Captain America's origins, but also the rest of the Avengers. Hulk is the villain in this one. Not the villain, he's the antagonist. And they have to fight him. Really, really good animated movie. There was a time when Marvel made good animated movies. The other suggestion is going to be Volume 1 of Captain America comic book. This is the run that Ed Brubaker wrote. He's the one that came up with the Winter Soldier, and his run on Captain America is really, really compelling. Really good stuff. So go ahead and check both of those out. Alright guys, that's the review. Go ahead and drop a like, give me a comment, let me know what you think. Where does this rank for you? If you want to give me your ranking of the Marvel movies, I would love to hear it. Leave that in the comments. Alright, as always, go check out the Instagram at FitGeekTraining. If you're ready to get in shape, I'm ready to help you out. I do it day in and day out. I want to help you, so go check out the website, fitgeektraining.com, and I will see you guys next week. Game over.